Don't narrowly track a gene level how apes like ourselves could have gotten religion.
Group selection, the ultimate validity of the idea of group selection, but I'm not interested in going down that rabbit hole because it doesn't matter to me one way or another. The potential validity of evolutionarily derived motivation march forward with a set of very productive ideas, extreme strategies for propagating yourself in the world, and one is to disseminate yourself as widely as possible and let the offspring live or die as they may, which would be the sperm bank approach. And then there's the other one, which is high investment in children, which is maybe taken to its extreme in human beings. But that isn't to say that the sexual morality that's part and parcel of our being, which seems to tend relatively strongly towards monogamy, for example, as marriage is a human universal, although there are variations of it. The misbegotten notion that our primary period of evolutionary determination was on the African veldt, and delving deeply into the grammatical structure underneath mythology is that features of the biological landscape is the existence of the dominance hierarchy portrayed in culture. So the dominance hierarchy is one major selection mechanism. It's the unknown, cognitively speaking or territorially speaking, that gives rise to new forms, is predicated on the idea that being is partly the known or the interpretive structure that's brought to bear on the situation. And so that's the white paisley, it's a serpent actually, and the unknown, which is the black paisley or serpent, and the two are interchangeable, and out of them arises meaning in what you don't know, and that's the place where information flow is maximized.
Easy to conceive of any human life or the life of a whole civilization in terms of stories like that.
It's the first perspective. So it's certainly capable for people to experience deeply a sense of meaning. You know, Csikszentmihalyi, they talked about that as flow, which I think is a rather trivial way of dealing with it, in some sense of standing outside of time, because you don't, as time's flow.
Based on a misconception or divorced from the truth?
Sam, I think that's a great question. I mean, one of the things that really disturbed me when I was first working out these ideas, like I've read an awful lot about extraordinarily pathological people. They have to keep extending their pathology into the unknown to keep getting that rush. Embodied truth, which is the consistent attempt to go beyond what you know, acting in the world, attempting to understand very carefully where you're in error, and learning everything you can to correct that. Now, Horus is an eye and a falcon because falcons can see better than any other animal, including human beings. The open iris signifies paying attention. And Horus, who's a messianic figure in some sense for the ancient Egyptians, had his eyes open to the corruption of the state, which was symbolized by a deity named Seth. And Horus was able to keep his eyes open and understand the corrupt nature of his society.
It seems to me that this kind of language game, from my point of view, are living in some form of radical error, which is to say that virtually everything they think is true almost certainly isn't.
Liverpool Line Street, where this service will terminate. All change clear, Liverpool Line Street.
Like you're basically kind of like looking at you know, like interaction being on demand in a way more than anything. So it's like instead of like, you know, like meeting up with someone as being like a happenstance thing, it's like you're incubated in your room when you're just like, I need to see someone, so you just like YouTube like
in the tube. So like they're surrounded by people and just alienating a little bubble, and then just getting their fix of like seeing what.
It's like it's being able to like control like being able to like control like the amount of like endorphins that you receive from like interaction, rather than like having like a kind of like wild experience with someone more than anything, you know. And I don't know, so like I guess that like lends into the whole kind of like maybe media bubble like conversation. But then there's also like what I find really fascinating is like the whole thing about what's it, you know, when people are like doing their like I'm just gonna like catch you up about like my week thing, you know, like before I get started about like my unboxing, I'm gonna like just tell you about my week. And I love that, because it's that thing where it's like, you know, they're just like putting themselves in this like high, like this self-intensified zone of trying to make their week interesting, and like trying to like sell like every mundane element of like of their life. Really annoying, but then it's also like really comforting, I think, for a lot of people, because it's like, oh shit, like yeah, I also have like an intensely boring week as well, and I will find a way to like make that sound interesting. Yeah, like you're just looking at these kind of intensifications of like of like socializing, being this thing where like you're creating this kind of like self-incubation zone of just of like almost like discover, like it's almost like self-discovery, but like through such a kind of like, but through like the spectacle of the self. It's I mean, I guess like I probably make a really good like, you know, exposed muscle and stuff like that.
That's later on. Now it's in postscript, is it? Laser skin.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, this bit's really nice. Yeah.
And that was that frame thing I was on about.
They, like I think, because for me it's like that frame is, you know, it's like quite iconic of the whole piece. Like the Francis Bacon thing of like creating a box within a box.
Well, for me, it's like it's like a failed capture. You know, like it's like trying to hold his voice and then make it a face.
There's a sense of territorialization of personal space at play, a self-mythologization. The black body and its evasion of the lash builds up a standard braggadocio, a standard orbit of spatial possibility.
Never come on. Usayibamba. Iwile yona vele.
The idea of transforming, mimicking, reorienting social currency in the most scarce of conditions.
The ways that technology are affecting the way we speak, the way we think through language, or whether that's the sort of ghosts. And this collaboration between Kepla, theorist and writer Forrest Brown, Northwest anyway based filmmaker Chris Boyd.
We are only material.
I'm looking at the black performer.
The best time to speak.
Until the ocean stood still beneath him. He narrowed his eyes in fierce concentration, held his breath, forced one single more inch of curve. Then his feathers ruffled, he stalled, and he fell. And he fell.
10 minutes on the bus, not too bad.
So will I be in that?
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'm down with it. And I don't necessarily work within that world or that sphere. I kind of drew it. It's a kind of, the book itself is a kind of facsimile, and so it comes in a big box, and you open the box. You know, it's fragments of poetry. It's kind of like bits of photographs and letters and things, and so it's just a really personal response. And I was just like really taken by it, and I thought, look, there's something in that. But there's so much kind of like rigmarole and like limitation and red tape that you've got to go through. Ideally, it's got to be notated in a certain way. And these like limitations that are like plonked on the thing. Mixed media notation. And I write standard classical music notation. It's like trying to find a way to get out of that. Things are planned so far in advance. That's 5 years, like a full-scale opera for 2023. So that's 7 years work, basically. Every single one of his pieces is just like pretty much flawless. Pretty much flawless. And the level of invention, the emotional impact, the drama of it, the nuance, the way he writes for the instruments, the structure. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that someone can like really comes from like a distinct lineage of European musical thinking, honing in on material and making every single note count and this, that, and the other. What sense of risk he would have taken in his work? Like, to me, it seems so completely in control, and like he knows exactly what he's doing in everything, and there's no sense of him not knowing what he's doing. So that kind of like meticulous kind of I'm doing this, I'm doing that, dun, dun, dun. But do I really agree with this like line of European classical music, which is so a part of like this tradition, this like ritual or whatever, or do I want it to be more messy and break out? And like that piece, The Immortal, that was a kind of combination of like two, and that alternates between things which are kind of like more superimposed and messy, and it's very inward looking, and it's very hard to like break molds.
The great mother archetype. I think I spoke about it briefly anyway in that talk. I was saying that I had these two sign regimes, the one which was like sort of circular, broken kind of contours, alpha linear, so very logocentric. So this side is dynamic, and this one's like Apollonia, basically fictionalized electronic underworld. Treating this old piece of work as a ghost.
You'd use all the material from the old, and then
objects or almost sort of style. They're almost like characters, a glitchy kind of noise, amorphous sort of floor. I'd like to kind of treat that as almost like a fury in the underworld that's kind of there, and this is like a shrine made for this fury.
If these characters had things to sing,
how would you make a libretto for like some glitch pixels?
Yeah. Like how would they, or would you invent a language?
Bird like chirps.
Oh really?
And then someone else who has the other side of the app, he just plays sound.
Yeah. Cheers.
Well, it's kind of like a machine at all. So he's like the spine, essentially.
Well, that kind of, yeah. I mean, because I'm building it, so when you hear one word, and she might just written one word, but that word for me is like 30 seconds worth of orchestral and chorus music.
Okay. It's the opposite, actually. Perhaps write dialogue. Get rid of that. Might be to a point where it's just someone's expression that says all this dialogue.
Yeah. If you say Dionysian underworld to me, I just immediately think of the Stockhausen opera, where they're in hell. I'll send it to you that, you'll fucking love that.
Yeah.
You will love that. But the interesting thing for me is that I want to be able to like get outside of my own box and then try and get into your box.
What happens if you get break apart the libretto? A turbulent movement is almost like sometimes like a focus, and it's something as abstract like that, if that had its own life as a character.
A turbulent movement?
No, like you're asking me to understand that. Well, it's a thing like a sound designer would just kind of like illustrate the flow. They just kind of illustrate images but rather than like get to the essence of what this thing is about. That's the beginning of a sequence of events which are going to trace. Tonally, it's going to be very much like, I imagine, that visual perception ritual complex.
Right.
That's the kind of overall mood.
Tonally, you mean
As in like overall kind of mood.
Okay, not music. Okay.
Emotions, yeah, character.
You'd have to, yeah, I think whenever all the cast and stuff,
I've got the book and the libretto is in that.
Yeah, so have you seen it? Yeah.
Where is the secret gardens? At the
It's about places like
Canal Walks.
Canal Walks. So it's a loose, broad theme. So it's about placing Warrington in a broader context, as well as connecting Warrington internally, but connecting it with the rest of Britain. I should have been at this meeting the other day. It would have just been a bit more. We needed some of this kind of thinking.